Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. So today we're going to go over two more of Jesus' commandments. Don't seek glorification or praise. Seek to serve, not to be served. Part 1. Don't seek glorification or praise. Matthew chapter 6, verse 1 to 4. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you openly. Don't fish for compliments, and don't perform noble acts with the intention of receiving applause and praise from those around you. Whatever kindness or act of charity that you do, conceal it. Do it in secret, and don't boast about it. And don't only express kindness when there's others around you to admire you for it. Flattery and recognition should not be the motive for an act of righteousness. Don't do good things just to be seen by people, but do them because they're good things to do. And God, who sees everything that's done in secret, will reward us openly. Matthew 6, verses 5 to 9. When you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners, that they may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you pray, enter your closet, and when you have shut your door, pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. But when you pray, do not use vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they will be heard for their much speaking. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what things you have need of before you ask of him. Jesus again describes the Pharisees, and he refers to them as hypocrites, choosing to pray in the street corners and in crowded places, and that they choose to pray using fancy wordplay because secretly they wanted to be seen and to be praised by the people. They loved this attention, and through this, their pride worsened and worsened. Jesus instructs us to do the exact opposite. Jesus states that when we pray, we ought to pray privately and in secret. God knows when someone is praying with a hidden intention to garner applause and praise. So don't use prayer as a means of retrieving admiration from other people. Jesus instructs us to pray with humility and to pray with sincerity. Matthew 6, verses 16 through 18. Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, so they may appear to men to be fasting. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you will not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Fasting is done as a sacrifice to God. It's an act of self-denial, a mortification of the flesh. It's a humbling of the soul, symbolic for the conquering of the flesh. In these days, the Pharisees claimed to be fasting for God, but in actuality, they were fasting for the attention and for the praise of the people. The Pharisees ensured that all the people that saw them would notice the self-infliction that they were going through because of the fast. But Jesus instructs that when we fast, we're not to boast about what we're doing. We're not to covet for our fastings to be seen and to be known by others. We're not to exaggerate our weaknesses as an attempt to receive pity or to receive praise or applause. We are to trust that God, being omniscient, is our witness, and He, seeing everything that's done in secret, will reward us openly. John 12, verse 43. For they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. Part 2. Seek to serve and not to be served. In chapter 10 of the book of Mark, two of Jesus' disciples, James and John, asked Jesus that after He is risen, for Him to give them both a place, one on His left hand and one on His right hand. The other 10 disciples then became very angry at James and John. Jesus knew that this ambitious request was made out of a lust for honor and out of a desire for glory. So He then calls His 12 disciples over and says this. Mark 10, verse 42 to 45. You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. But it shall not be so among you. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever among you would be greatest must be servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give His life as a ransom for many. Jesus reminds His disciples that in the nations of the world, their rulers seek not to protect them, but instead to exercise authority and rulership over them. These leaders care more about what they can get out of their subjects and servants, and not what they can do for them. Jesus teaches us that when we have others placed under our charge, that we must care for them as sheep being cared for by a shepherd. And a good shepherd protects his sheep. He leads them, He feeds them, He guides them, and He tends to them. Jesus teaches us that a shepherd ought not to treat those under his charge as horses under the command of a driver who works them and beats them and does everything possible to get his money's worth out of them. The leader of the people, according to Jesus, should be serving the people and should not be seeking to be served. Imagine that you were leading a group of people to enter in at a door. A selfish leader would be the first one through that door while everyone else is following behind him. A righteous leader would ensure that everyone who he's responsible for would get through that door first, and then he would be the last to enter. Mark 9, verse 35. He sat down and called the 12, and He said to them, If anyone desires to be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. In John 13, right before the Passover festival, Jesus knew that His death was drawing near, and that night He was having supper with His disciples. He then rose up. He took off His outer clothes. He wrapped a towel around His waist. He poured water in a bowl, and then He started to wash His disciples' feet. John 13, verses 12 to 17. So when He had washed their feet and put on His garments and sat down again, He said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me Master and Lord. You speak accurately, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you should do as I have done to you. Truly, truly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. This is a very powerful display of humility. With this example, Jesus shows His disciples that if He, being Lord and Master, can humble Himself to the point where He's washing the feet of those that are under His charge, that we, should also rid ourselves of our pride and of our ego, and should seek to serve others with that same degree of humility and lowliness. Jesus teaches us that leadership and that being great is not about dominating others, but it's about serving and caring for them. So that's it for today, guys. I thank you for your time and I thank you for your support. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and like our video, and stay tuned for our next study.